everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. I sincerely appreciate you checking into this episode. This one is going to be a little shorter, to be perfectly honest with you. I set out in this podcast every day to bring you context and clarity and the most accurate information possible on the top stories. Help you understand them, maybe hear a little bit more about them. That's my goal. There's actually not a ton going on today, so I don't need to go too in-depth. So give me a little bit of time here. I'm going to cover a number of different topics, and at any point, Anna Almeida could break through that studio door. She might literally kick it down because she is watching right now the courthouse in London to find out the fate of the 5 World Junior hockey players who are accused of sexual assault. We talked a lot about that during the trial. Today is verdict day. I hope that by the end of this episode, I've got a verdict to bring you. If not, just know that tomorrow it is going to be in the pod. Also, looking ahead, Monday, silent date guy update. They got together last weekend and they're getting together this weekend, and there's something in the mix. Something that he found at her house that he needs to talk to her about, and I should have all of the information for you on Monday's episode of the pod. Tomorrow is listener DMs. You can send those in anytime. Just slide into my DMs. I prefer Instagram, but you can use whatever platform you prefer. Just find me at Scott Fox on air. Let's get into it now. One of the things that is really starting to catch some traction south of the border is these new accusations that are coming from the White House and from the intelligence community about former President Barack Obama and former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and a number of others. I'm hearing more and more the word treason being used. And I think that there's a lot of people who have heard a little bit, but not a lot, and they're trying to understand exactly what this is, what the accusation is against President Obama, and how the American people were hoodwinked. It seems, though, that some people are not understanding it. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to dedicate a fair bit of time here to playing for you, in their own words, what the White House and the Department of National Intelligence are saying about what the accusation is against President Obama and Hillary Clinton. Some of it is a little hard to follow, granted. Some of it you're going to have to think back to 2016. But I think that by the end of this episode, you're going to have a little more context and clarity. I'm going to start off by taking you to yesterday's White House press briefing. The White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, began by explaining what they say the issue is. And I'm going to say they say because I haven't confirmed any of this yet, and I'm still waiting for a little bit more from the Department of National Intelligence. I'm interested in where this is going because I don't think that anybody should be allowed to break the law and get away with it. But I'm also conscious of the fact that this is somewhat politically motivated. So let's hear what the White House had to say yesterday about the accusations against President Barack Obama.
On another matter, over the past few days, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has unveiled shocking new evidence that former President Barack Obama and top aides in the Obama administration conspired to subvert President Trump's 2016 election victory and undermine the democratic will of the American people. While publicly pretending to engage in a peaceful transfer of power, in private, former President Obama went to great and nefarious lengths to try to sow discord among the public and sabotage his successor, President Trump. The new evidence released by the Director of National Intelligence, who is here with me today, confirms that the Obama administration manufactured politicized intelligence, which was later used as the justification for baseless smears against President Trump in an effort to try to delegitimize his victory before he even took the oath of office.
I'm going to pause the press secretary right there and try and clear that up in case you're not sure what they're saying there. Basically, the White House's position now is that after Trump won in 2016, he beat Hillary Clinton. The outgoing president has an obligation to work with the incoming president on the transition, the peaceful transfer of power from one president to another. And I distinctly remember in 2016, it seemed very amicable. I thought, wow, Obama just saw his girl lose, but he's actually working very well with the incoming president. That's the way it seemed in public. What the White House is suggesting is behind closed doors, Obama was working on something nefarious. He wanted to convince the American people that Trump was not legitimately elected, that Russia interfered to get him elected. We now know that that was simply not true. And you're going to hear some evidence to that in just a few minutes. Let's get back to yesterday's White House press briefing.
The truth is that President Trump never had anything to do with Russia, and the Russia collusion hoax was a massive fraud perpetuated on the American people from the very beginning. And the worst part of this is Obama knew that truth, and so did all of the other corrupt officials involved in this scam, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and many others. Director of National Intelligence Gabbard's report further confirms what we already knew. There was no collusion, no corruption, except on the part of Barack Obama and the weaponized intelligence agencies at the time. The Russia hoax was a blatant lie, all ginned up by Democrat political operatives that were signed off on by then President Obama and leaked to the news media to launch a years-long witch hunt against President Trump and his first administration. Allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets, and some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie.
Okay, let's pause it there. Yeah, that's exactly how I remember it as well. Now, I did not know some of what Carolyn Levitt just said there. That President Obama manufactured something, whatever it was. It wasn't intelligence, because the intelligence said that Russia was not helping Donald Trump. In fact, the intelligence, as you're going to hear in a minute, actually indicated that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton. They had it and they sat on it. They didn't use it in the days before the election. By all accounts, it seems that the Russians stayed out of this election, and Obama knew it. The accusation here is that Obama, not wanting to see a Donald Trump 4-year presidency, immediately began to undermine the results of that election, trying to make it known that Donald Trump only got elected because the Russians interfered in the American election. Please don't take my word for it. You're going to hear a lot in this episode that will verify what I have just cleared up there. Let's do a little bit more from Carolyn Levitt, and then we're going to get to Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence.
The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government. Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light. And this truth vindicates President Trump, his family, and his many allies and associates who were smeared with defamatory lies. President Trump was right from the beginning about all of this, and we are grateful that justice can be served. Now, we have even more damning evidence implicating those who tried to sabotage a duly elected president and did grave material harm to our republic. Thanks to additional important work done by CIA Director Ratcliffe, Committee Chairman Rick Crawford over the past few months, a newly declassified 2020 report prepared by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which DNI Director Gabbard has declassified, found that the intel community did not have any direct information that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to help elect President Trump in 2016, and in fact, Russia was actively preparing for a Hillary Clinton victory. But at the unusual direction of Barack Obama at the time, the intel community published implausible intelligence suggesting otherwise. Why? To sabotage the incoming president.
And that's not okay. That is an assault on democracy. If you think about it, there's a lot of people who right now absolutely loathe Donald Trump for a lot of different reasons. And it could be the most recent stuff, the tariffs, the 51st state stuff. It could be any number of things, for sure. But there are a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, clearly, in 2016. Enough people to elect him president. If right away the opposition started planning for 2020 to make sure that there was no way he would get reelected and possibly to get him kicked out in his first term, that's where the seeds of hate against Donald Trump really started to grow. That's where it really started to catch hold. And it all began on intelligence that wasn't real. It was manufactured, it was manipulated, and it was dropped in front of the American people and spread by the media that Donald Trump was a Russian asset, that Donald Trump was the choice of the Kremlin. And it turns out nothing could be further from the truth. So now let's get to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She was there yesterday at that White House press briefing. She brought the receipts. She laid it all out. I've got about 6 minutes of Tulsi here, and I'm not sure if I'm going to play the whole thing. I'm going to stop at various times and talk about it, but I think that this is really important because we've been misled for at least 10 years on this. At least 10 years. This episode isn't to change your mind on how you feel about Donald Trump. It's to simply point out that what we thought was true and we just accepted as fact was not fact. It was a major manipulation by the government, the intelligence community, and the media. Here is Tulsi Gabbard.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice.
So you've just heard Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard explain why this is important. And I think that's important. Yeah, we need to understand why this matters. Why are we talking about something now that happened in 2016? Well, this goes back to the heart of it all, something I've been talking about since I launched this podcast, trust in government. You know, when they're speaking from the bully pulpit, when you're the president of the United States or you're the whatever in his cabinet, you have a certain amount of credibility that should come with everything you say. We're supposed to be able to trust what we're being told by our leaders and trust that it's not being told to us for political reasons. It's being told because it's truth. That's not what happened here. We have an outgoing president who is still, to this day, very much in control of the Democratic Party. If back then he was pretending that he was engaging in the peaceful transfer of power, but we know that he was leading a covert operation to completely undermine the president and turn the public against him right away before he even did anything, that is an affront to democracy. There's just no other way to look at it. But again, it's not about my take on this. Let's hear the actual facts. These are newly declassified documents coming to you now from the Department of National Intelligence. I also want to point out here, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, is a former Democrat. Back in the day, she was a candidate for president as a Democrat. There's a lot of people who feel the Democrats made a huge mistake when they used Hillary Clinton as their candidate in 2016. In 2020, it was Joe Biden with Kamala Harris. It could have just as easily been Tulsi Gabbard. It could have been. She was a very popular, prominent Democrat, and she's got a great record, too, a former member of the armed forces and so on and so forth. You're welcome to look into her if you want. This is someone who shouldn't have a bias. This is someone who seems to come at an issue from a very common sense place. I think that she's going to follow the facts. That's the way I'm interpreting what she's been releasing and how she's been acting over the last few months. Very professionally, if you ask me. So I'm going to listen to her and I'm going to trust her and what she's telling us as fact, as she is the Director of National Intelligence. Here she is.
This report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
So now we know that Russia had incriminating things that they could have put out there about Hillary Clinton. They made the strategic decision to hold on to that information until after the election because they were fully expecting Hillary was going to win that election. The Russians thought Hillary was going to win. They didn't have anything on Donald Trump, but that's not what we were told. The whole thing got flipped around in that Trump was in bed with them. That's not where the evidence is taking us here, guys. That's not it. It seems like Hillary Clinton wasn't even qualified to be a presidential candidate at the time because she was on heavy tranquilizers, as Tulsi just said there. Apparently, she was a mess. Reports out of the White House now are that Barack Obama was extremely concerned about Hillary and her ability to carry on because she was so sick. And none of that came out. It was all about their team winning. That's crazy. Let's hear just a little bit more of Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief.
I'm going to leave it there. That's good for now. I think we've heard quite a bit there. And while I still don't hear a smoking gun there, this certainly does not look good for President Obama. It doesn't look good for the Democratic Party, a party that's currently sitting at just 20% approval right now. We cannot have the quest to remain in power empower these people to lie to the public. You know, I get that Barack Obama wants the Democrats in power. I get that he wants his team there. But you can't lie to the people. You can't make up fake intelligence assessments. You're supposed to be cheering on a new president. There's always going to be losers in an election. Whoever loses, you feel bad for them and they generally go away. That's basically what happened with Hillary Clinton. She more or less went away after she lost in 2016, other than a few strategic media appearances. President Obama, seeing that his person lost, should have been right behind the new president. And I know he doesn't like him, but he should have been behind the new president, willing him on, cheering him on, trying to get the American people to get behind the agenda that they just voted for. It seems like he did the exact opposite. And that is just wrong. Let's get to some of the Q&A.
Any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
They're going to refer it to the Department of Justice. That means they could possibly begin preparing an indictment. If there's an indictment, there would be an arrest. And President Obama would eventually go to court. He'd be on trial for whatever the charge ends up being. I'm not sure what the charge would be here, but make no mistake about it. If what we're hearing here from the Department of National Intelligence is true, if it is accurate, and I have no reason to think it's not, they've declassified everything. I haven't gone through it, but I trust that other people have, people a lot smarter than me, and nobody seems to disagree with the findings here. Then yeah, President Obama should probably be on trial. Wow. I mean, I'm shocked even saying that. I just can't wrap my mind around that. That's just not who I thought he was. I thought Obama was all about the peaceful transfer of power. That's the way he made it seem. The Democrats went after Trump like crazy because of the Capitol riots. Well, now we've got evidence that it was really a bunch of operatives that went in there and did the bulk of the damage. Most of the people who entered the Capitol were very peaceful. They walked in, they wandered around, they took some selfies, and they left. We don't appear to know the truth. It would seem that the narrative that we've been fed for many years now, particularly surrounding President Trump, is not reality. That's the way it seems. But the only way that this could be perpetuated on the American people is if they had manufactured fake intelligence. And it seems like that's what they've done. Man, the thought of a former president on trial. I'll bet you if you'd suggested that even a few months ago and said, you know, it won't be that long. You're going to see a president of the United States on the witness stand. You're going to see him in handcuffs. I would have assumed you were talking about Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This is some wild stuff here, just absolutely wild. And like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. And I don't know where we go from here, but I'm very curious. I just want to make sure that justice is done and the message is sent that you can't lie to the people. These politicians don't seem to understand that they work for us. Or maybe we don't understand that they don't work for us. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe this is a perception thing. They get elected. They feel they've got the ability to say and do whatever they want. The people be damned. We're just the peasants. We're just the taxpayers. We're the money, but we don't really have any say. Maybe that's indirectly what they're trying to say here. We'll keep watching it and we'll see where it goes. Now, I want to get to a few domestic issues before I wrap up this fairly short episode of Scott Fox After 9. As you know, the first ministers, including the Prime Minister, we're all meeting at a great resort catch-up there in Muskoka, Ontario. Deerhurst Resort. They got together, they threw themselves one hell of a party, lots of elbow rubbing with the media, and everybody seemed to have a great time. Good. But did anything get done? Still wondering that. I still haven't seen anything tangible in the way of progress come out of that meeting. But I do want to play a little bit of the closing news conference with all the premiers yesterday. A couple of interesting questions came up, and I think you'd like to hear the answers.
Mark McAllister from City News. A question for Premier Ford, if possible. A month ago, you had said that you would be all over Prime Minister Carney when it came to bail reform. Yes. Just a few moments ago, you said that you would continue to hold him to account on the matter. Excuse me. There is indication that there is legislation coming forward in the fall. So where is the disconnect exactly at this point that there's a need to continue to hold him to account?
Well, I just want to make sure that they put that legislation forward. You know, I've heard this in the past, and I have a great deal of respect for Prime Minister Carney. He's a gentleman that when he says he's going to do something, I believe him. He's going to get it done. But there still has to be accountability. And it's not, you know, half-baked either, because last time it was kind of hokey-pokey. We want, you know, full-fledged bail reform, and I'd love to see mandatory sentencing. So when someone breaks into your home, puts a gun to your head, terrorizes your neighborhood, doesn't get out on bail after being out on bail for 5 times. And that's what we need. When you break a law, one country, one law, you're going to jail, and there'll be a deterrent for all the other criminals who want to terrorize our neighborhoods and keep them behind bars. So when they steal a car or put a gun to someone's head, well, you're going to jail for a long time if you use a weapon.
I just want to point out to everybody here, I have no reason to think that Mark Carney won't do that. Premier Ford seems fairly convinced that Carney is going to do it. Premier Ford also taken some more backhanded shots at Justin Trudeau. He did that a number of times this weekend, and I can only assume that part of the strategy is buddy up with Carney and throw Trudeau under the bus for just about everything. And frankly, Trudeau deserves it. He deserves it. So I don't have a problem with that. I hope he wears it. When it comes to bail reform, I think what Doug is going to have to prepare himself for, and I think what most of us are going to have to prepare ourselves for, is we have a new prime minister, but it's still the same people in the background, and I don't think anything is really going to change when it comes to bail reform. I'm sure they will introduce some things here and there that are kind of helpful. I'm not expecting to see this Liberal government introduce mandatory minimum sentences, especially when they were so critical of Stephen Harper for doing it, and then they ended up getting rid of them on the Liberal watch anyway. The courts have basically ruled that mandatory minimums are not going to work, so I don't know where Prime Minister Carney goes there, and I doubt he's going to use the notwithstanding clause to make it known that if you commit a crime with a weapon, it is a minimum 10 years in jail. I don't expect that from the Liberals. Maybe I do from Mark Carney, but from the party overall, which is the government, I don't think we're going to get what we want here. They're kicking the can down the road. Wait until the new legislative session. Can't do it now because Parliament isn't sitting. It could be, but it's not. So wait until September, then we'll introduce the bill, then we're going to debate the bill, then we're going to vote on it. It probably won't even get passed until after Christmas, if I'm looking down the line. I don't think that this is a priority for the Liberals, and nor do I think they agree with bail reform. If I'm being honest, there's not been any indication that they're a law and order party. They're just not. They got rid of a lot of what Stephen Harper did, and they relaxed the rules to such an extent that we find ourselves in the situation we're in now. These bail laws that we have are from the Liberals. Will the Liberals be the ones to fix it? I don't know. I mean, Doug Ford seems to have some confidence in Prime Minister Carney. I have no reason to not have confidence in him other than the people behind him don't seem to be in favor of that.
Hello, I'm Michael Serapia with CPAC. I direct my question to you, Premier Ford, but invite commentary from other premiers as well, because in the communique, there's the reference that premiers look forward to a comprehensive mutual recognition agreement covering all goods with implementation by December of this year. I'm wondering, where are you right now in those discussions? At what point will Canadians hear details about what you as premiers are agreeing to achieving internal free trade?
Before we get to the answer, that's what they said. Now the goalpost is December. Can't figure out free trade in our own country until December. All of the premiers have had now multiple meetings, wasted millions and millions of dollars, and we all thought that they were working towards that goal. No trade barriers, we're one economy. Now they're saying December. What are we waiting for? I think every one of these people should step down. Apparently, this is an emergency. They were the ones who told us it was an emergency. All these meetings, all that staff, all those lawyers. And it's going to take until December to get this done? I don't accept that. I think that is just actually crazy. But I'm just a commentator. Let's hear from the lawmakers.
Well, I think we've come a long way, considering no other group of premiers, as long as I can ever remember, have been able to sign 11 MOUs. There's still a couple, and had a great conversation with the two premiers from Quebec and Newfoundland, and they're going to, I'm sure they're going to come on board as well. This is about making sure that we have free and fair trade across our country. And to be very frank, before this came to topic this year, 99% of Canadians believe that they could have free trade across the country. But this is going to boost our economy by over $200 billion. It will increase our GDP by anywhere from 5 to 6%. But you talk to the average person, they can't believe that we can ship a bottle of wine from Ontario out to BC or vice versa. And the case that you were saying, Tim, about the deal about someone shipping a case from Quebec into Nova Scotia got charged. Do you believe that? Or where was it? New Brunswick? New Brunswick, sorry. But do you believe that? Someone being charged, going to court because they buy a case of booze in Quebec and bring it to New Brunswick? So we're moving forward with this. We're getting rid of, at least Ontario is, getting rid of any amendments, and we're going full steam. Ontario's open for business, and we look forward to companies coming to Ontario and opening up shop here.
And if I can just take the opportunity to jump in because he's referencing the Como case, I'm pleased to confirm that New Brunswick passed legislation this year to eliminate that personal exemption. So you can bring alcohol products from Quebec into New Brunswick now with no fines. And we've also passed a direct-to-consumer legislation so that New Brunswickers can enjoy the benefits of BC wines and Ontario wines, and look forward to continuing to expand the work like we're doing on labor mobility. And I'll just echo, actually, that I think we have made more progress than has been made in a long time on internal trade and removing exemptions, thankfully with a partner in the federal government who's also been aggressive on that, and I appreciate the desire to see the details and see the when. I think you'll find friends who are similarly impatient at this table of wanting to see it get to that simple, clean document that all Canadians and entrepreneurs can understand about the fact that they can put a good they've made in a truck in BC and take it all the way across the country without added burden, pause, or cost. That's what we're striving towards. We're making good progress, and we're optimistic that we'll have something that people will appreciate come the end of this year.
What a bunch of hacks. Oh my God. How is this not done? You know, I'll at least give Premier Ford credit. He seems to want to get this done. He seems to realize that we, the regular folks, cannot believe that this is not done. The only people that are saying, well, we've done a good job so far, are the premiers themselves. I don't know what these people don't understand. I truly feel they should all step down, all of them. Anybody who's a barrier, anybody who's an obstacle, anybody who isn't ready to sign right now that we have one economy, no barriers, no extra costs, no restrictions, no tariffs, free trade amongst the provinces. Canadians are free to do and work and travel and whatever they want in their own country. If they're not all willing to sign on to that right goddamn now, every one of them should be fired. Every single one of them. Because that is completely crazy. Like, actually insane that this isn't done. How much money did these people waste up in Muskoka this weekend? I talked to a few people now who were there, and they said this thing was lit. It was a party. The booze was flowing. They brought in bands. They had the media all out hobnobbing with the politicians, and it's just gross. Apparently, we're in an emergency, and the people who actually could do something about it have now moved the goalpost to by December. They hope to have this done. Unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. Friends, I'm done for today. Have yourselves a wonderful one. I'll be back tomorrow with listener DMs, and I will be bringing in Anna Almeida to discuss whatever the verdict is today at the World Junior Hockey Championship trial. A lot of reason, I think, to assume it's going to be a not guilty verdict for all of them, but I don't know. I'm really not sure how the judge is going to rule. It's going to be an interesting episode tomorrow. We will discuss that, your DMs, and whatever else happens in the next 24 hours. Have a great day. I'll leave you now with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.